All right, well, let's go ahead and get started. It's 1 after 11. There may be some other folks that join us, and welcome everyone. And good morning. My name's David Burton. I am a partner with Williams Mullen in the Labor and Employment and Immigration section. I also serve as the regional managing partner for the firm for the Hampton Roads offices. And it's our pleasure to be here today, myself and one of the associates that works with me, Scott Terrell. We're going to team up with the Virginia Beach Economic Development Department. And we've got Ray White here from there. And we're going to focus today on how you can minimize employment-related risks that have arisen due to major changes that the Virginia General Assembly has adopted the last 2 years. At the end, we're also going to do a little talk about everybody's favorite topic these days, vaccinations, the do's and don'ts. So as we look in our half hour with you, Ray White is going to provide us with some important updates from his department. And then Scott and I will go over the Virginia wage theft law, the minimum wage requirements that Virginia has enhanced. We'll talk about the Virginia Values Act and Virginia's first non-compete statute. Next slide, please. Before we kick off the program, I've got a couple of housekeeping items to go over. If at any point during your presentation, you can submit a question using the Q&A button, we are going to do our best to answer those questions unless they just come screaming in. We're going to try to answer them as we go along so that it's a little bit more interactive. If we do not get done with your question, we will have the questions afterwards. And as long as we've got your email address, we will provide responses to you. If you're having any audio or technical problems, please use your Q&A button and our helpful marketing folks will help you get those issues resolved. Everyone who registered and is attending will get a copy of the slides that we're using today. And then finally, the presentation is being recorded because I know many of you will want to go back and enjoy that on YouTube, especially when the lawyers speak. It'll make everybody really happy to do that again. All right, well, let's turn it over and get the program started with Ray. Ray?
Good morning. I certainly appreciate teaming up with Williams and Williams Mullen on this presentation today. And Kiki, if you could, next one, slide, please. Just want to give you a quick overview of what's been happening here in economic development in Virginia Beach during the last year. And as you know, we've all had to deal with a lot of challenges of COVID. And we certainly were proactive in providing $2.5 million that was allocated by our city council and the Development Authority in Virginia Beach to assist our business community with a lot of the issues that they've had during COVID. Also, a lot of the CARES Act money that was dedicated by the federal government passed through our office to help Virginia Beach businesses. So that was another big help to keep people open, to keep minimized loss of jobs. Also out of this, we're officially going to be announcing this probably in the next 30 or 45 days, but I'll give you a little insight that we're going to open a new business assistance center in Virginia Beach here at Town Center called the Hive. And we have arrangements with Virginia Wesleyan University, the Hampton Roads Workforce Development Council, and others to partner for training and retraining programs to get people back to work because of COVID. During this certainly challenging time, there have been several aspects of our business community that have done fairly well. Manufacturing, distribution, our warehousing and logistics have all been areas of growth during the pandemic. And as you can imagine, a lot of folks are ordering products online rather than going into stores. And I think this certainly has been a key aspect of the growth in this particular area. And also we've seen companies take advantage of the low interest rates. Even though they're starting to creep back up, I think during the past year, companies with the wherewithal have taken advantage of that to continue their growth. Next, please. Moving towards the future, there are several things that we're spending a lot of our time on. We feel there's tremendous opportunities. The offshore wind projects is certainly one that you've heard about. The Coastal Virginia Offshore Wind Project is the one by Dominion Energy. It's an investment of $8.4 billion on that project, create 1,100 jobs here in Hampton Roads, the region as a whole, and even beyond in the Commonwealth. Kitty Hawk Offshore Project is one by Avangrid Renewables, and it's right off Kitty Hawk, but a lot of the activity regarding that's going to be here in Virginia Beach in the region. They'll be landing their cable in Virginia Beach, and we've already been meeting with them about erecting a substation here that would allow the power to come in and tie to the grid. Communications hub is another big opportunity for us. We now have 3 cables up and running in Virginia Beach, the Maria cable from Spain, the Brusa from Brazil, and the Dunnet from France, which is a Google cable. It was recently announced about a week or 10 days ago that Confluence One cable will also be coming in, and that's from New York. Cable landing stations and data centers. We've got several in Virginia Beach now, but we certainly see that as a continued growth area for us moving forward. Next, please. Other emerging opportunities, international business. We see a great opportunity, and we have representatives represent Virginia Beach in Spain, Germany, and the United Kingdom now. We basically make regular trips over there, and I think you're going to see some nice announcements later on this year with some of the European companies that are interested in locating and opening here in Virginia Beach. Another really exciting opportunity is we just in the process of opening our new Virginia Beach bio facility. And this is in the Convergence Business Park right here next to Town Center. And we'll certainly be having some announcements in the weeks and months ahead to fill up that facility. So exciting opportunity for the bio initiative that the city's had underway the last few years. Next, please. As far as development opportunities, we have on the graph on your left is our new innovation park. And we've got several companies already in phase 1 that's pretty much have taken up that property. We're rolling right into phase 2, but we have 80 plus acres out there that's now available for development. And that is located off Princess Anne Road by the Lansdowne Commons Shopping Center right across the street on your way down to Municipal Center, and also the National Golf Course right beside that. A brand new development that you may have read a little bit about is Oceana. The air station has unveiled a new future-based design program. And what this means is there are sites that are really not critical to Oceana, that they're going to allow commercial development on in conjunction with what they do, but they're concentrating more on the mission that they're designed for and freeing up this real estate. There are restrictions because obviously it's in the accident potential zone, but certainly warehousing, distribution, some manufacturing, or some types of businesses that can be located in that area, which gives us a tremendous asset from an economic development standpoint. And some of these may end up being government contractors that want to or need to be located next to Navy facilities. So with that, it's a quick overview, and certainly appreciate everyone's time today and joining in, and turn things over back to you, David.
Thank you, Ray. Those are exciting things going on in Virginia Beach, that's for sure. All right, well, let's go to the next slide, Kiki. What we're going to do is we're going to talk about some of these major statutes that Virginia has adopted in the last couple of years. I'm not making a political statement when I say this, but you know, for a state that for a long time did not really have any corresponding statutes to Title VII that had any real teeth to them. We have had a major change in Virginia in the last 2 years that reflects the demographics of the General Assembly, certainly, and what's going on there. But these statutes got some attention when they first came out, but they are starting to get a lot more attention now. And I'll give you a couple of sides as I go through these about what I'm seeing under these statutes and what we're dealing with. So the first thing I want to talk about is the Virginia Values Act. Virginia, for a long time, since the late 80s, had a Virginia Human Rights Act. And that statute very much mirrored Title VII and the Age Discrimination and Employment Act on the federal level. And what it said is, thou shalt not discriminate against individuals based upon their, sex, religion, race, and all those things, age. But it didn't apply to employers who had more than 14 employees. The statute only applied to those employers who had between 5 and 14. So when the Virginia Values Act was amended or created last year to amend the Virginia Human Rights Act, it did some fairly significant things. It added to the protected characteristics that Virginia will protect: sexual orientation, gender identity, and veteran status. So private employers, even public employers in Virginia, cannot discriminate on the basis of sexual orientation, gender identity, or veteran status. Now, you may ask, why is that a big deal? The United States Supreme Court last summer came down with some decisions that made it clear that sex includes sexual orientation and gender identity, those types of issues. That is true. However, Title VII never specifically reflected those protected characteristics, and the Virginia statute came out and became effective before the United States Supreme Court's decision. So in Virginia, those are protected characteristics. Every employer needs to have those protected characteristics in its policies and has to be prepared to deal with those issues. Now, one of the other things that the amendments to the Virginia Human Rights Act did is for termination claims, it now applies, instead of just those employers that had between 5 and 14, is it expanded the Virginia Human Rights Commission through the Office of the Virginia Attorney General. In termination claims, those claims can be investigated and even, for lack of a better phrase, prosecuted by the Office of the Attorney General for those employers that have more than 14 employees. So even though you may have more than 14 employees and covered by Title VII or the Age Discrimination and Employment Act or the Americans with Disabilities Act, you now will also be covered in termination issues by the Virginia Human Rights Act, the Virginia Values Act. And we'll see in a little bit what that can mean for you. For non-termination claims, it's, employers with 15 or more employees can be covered. And then with age claims, it's only those employers that have between 5 and 20. As I mentioned before, all of the Title VII characteristics that were protected are still protected with the additional protected areas that we talked about at the beginning. One of the big things that this statute does, because now you can bring it in Virginia and have the Office of the Attorney General investigate. If you wish to bring a claim under the Virginia Values Act, you can do so. And unlike Title VII, there is not going to be caps on the damages that you are entitled to that you have under Title VII in the Americans with Disabilities Act, the Age Discrimination and Employment Act. That presumably will make it more attractive for plaintiffs' lawyers to bring these cases in state court once they get through the administrative process than bringing it in federal court. Federal court is generally very favorable here in Virginia for employers. both because we have a very effective summary judgment procedure and because we have the ability, we have a lot of law on the issue over the years. So now you can bring these claims in Virginia. You don't have caps on your compensatory punitive damages, and there is attorney's fees and costs awarded to a plaintiff if they win. All right, next slide, please. That covers the amendments to the Human Rights Act. There was also changes in a creation of a pregnancy discrimination law in Virginia. That applies to anyone who has 5 or more employees. So if you are one of the few mom and pop shops in Virginia that has less than 5 employees, none of this applies to you right now, but who knows what may happen down the road with the General Assembly. But under this pregnancy discrimination law, if you've got 5 or more employees, you then have certain obligations you're going to need to comply with. First, you've got to make reasonable accommodations for known limitations of persons related to pregnancy, childbirth, or complicated conditions that come from that. The only time you don't have to make those accommodations is if it would be an undue burden to you. Those of you who have 15 or more employees and are used to complying with the Americans with Disabilities Act, you're familiar with doing that analysis of whether a reasonable accommodation poses an undue burden on an employer. We have no case law in Virginia on that, so Virginia juries are going to start deciding those issues at some point, and it will be interesting to see what happens there. You cannot, under the pregnancy discrimination law, discriminate or retaliate against employees who ask for that accommodation. That's not dissimilar to the ADA or things like that. But again, you can't retaliate. Both under the Virginia Human Rights Act and this statute, you are supposed to put up a poster. A lot of you all do your postings probably via your intranet now, but if you physically post like your 5-in-1 EEOC posters and things like that in the workplace, you are supposed to post information up about this pregnancy discrimination law, the Virginia Values Act. I confess I have not looked in about 2 weeks, but I was monitoring the various Virginia websites because they keep saying they are going to put out these posters for employers to put up. I have not seen them yet, but what these various agencies have said is you comply with that requirement if you post up a copy of the statute. So keep that in mind. But again, you got to include the information in your employee handbook, and you have to, under the pregnancy discrimination law, provide information about that statute directly to the employees at the time of their hire. And then secondarily, once the employee notifies you of a pregnancy, then you have to, within 20 days, also give them that information about their rights under the pregnancy discrimination law. Employees have 2 years to bring a claim under that statute if they feel like they've been retaliated against or they weren't provided with reasonable accommodations. And the remedies are compensatory damages, back pay, attorney's fees, and costs. All right, next slide. All right, I'm going to turn this part of the presentation then over to Scott Terrell, and Scott's going to talk to you about several of the wage issues that have come up through the General Assembly.
Yes, so one of the biggest changes to the enforcement environment is the enactment of the Virginia Wage Theft Law, which amends the Virginia Wage Payment Act. And essentially, workers can now bring lawsuits for not being paid enough. There are minimum wage violations, overtime violations, and other types of violations that will expose businesses to potential damages. As you can see, in terms of damages, the Virginia Wage Theft Law allows for substantial damages, most notably liquidated damages in the amount of 3 times the unpaid wages. This law is already in effect, of course, and collective and class actions are already being filed under this law. Next slide, please. Now, in terms of wages, the minimum wage is directly tied into how much you can be liable for under the Virginia wage theft law. When I was working at Chick-fil-A at Coliseum Mall, we were happy to get paid $6 an hour. That is not going to be the case anymore. As you can see, by 2026 in the state of Virginia, our minimum wage is going to be $15 an hour. And this does include both home care providers as well, and it updates automatically. Next slide. Of course, all this begs the question, who counts as an employee? Well, there's a big difference between employees and independent contractors for a variety of reasons. And what is important about these two Virginia laws is that regardless of how you classify a worker, whether as an independent contractor or as an employee or something else altogether, the statute is going to govern whether that person is an employee or not. So many states have similar laws. There's a federal standard too, and many states adopt the federal standards. There are different standards in different states. There's a unique standard in Virginia, and it is very employee friendly. First, the law establishes a presumption that a worker is an employee, not an independent contractor. So in other words, Virginia law will deem a worker to be an employee until proven otherwise by the business owner. And that presumptive status of the worker as an employee can only be rebutted if the business owner can prove that the worker meets the IRS test for an independent contractor. Spoiler alert, the test is pretty complicated. There are several factors and sub-factors that courts will the court will consider. But what's important is that we are carefully watching if those standards change, and they could change at any moment via IRS executive order or some type of a regulatory guidance. So if you have any questions about how this works, feel free to reach out. I think I'm turning this back over to David.
Yep, and before you switch that slide, the interesting thing on these wage statutes that Virginia did is it also, for the first time in Virginia, has allowed there to be class actions for these improper classifications or failure to pay overtime or failure to pay the Virginia minimum wage. We haven't had that in Virginia before. So Scott and I actually have a case going on right now for a client who is caught up in this issue of whether a group of individuals were independent contractors or employees. And there has been a lawsuit filed both under the Fair Labor Standards Act and under the Virginia misclassification statute. And the dividing line is that for a period of time up to July 1 of 2020, when this statute went into effect, they are proceeding solely under the Fair Labor Standards Act. But after July 1st, 2020, to the extent that there was a misclassification, they now are proceeding both under the FLSA and this miscalculation or misclassification statute. So we're going to have a unique situation if this case doesn't get resolved. We've stayed it right now to try to see if we can get it resolved. Where part of the case is going to be what's known as a collective action, and the other part of the case will be a class action. So it's going to be quite the headache, I think, if we have to deal with that. All right, next slide, please. All right, Virginia non-compete. Virginia adopted for the first time in its history, a statute involving non-competes. I can tell you that for years, the Virginia Bar Association had worked through its labor and employment section to try to get the General Assembly interested in doing a non-compete statute like some other states have. Georgia is one example that's very, very clear about, okay, here, if you draft a non-compete in the following way, these things will be presumed to be reasonable and enforceable. The General Assembly didn't see it in its mind to do that. It got beat down year after year, but last year they did adopt this non-compete, and they've tied it to what is known as low-wage workers. And so what happens under this statute is that in Virginia, you cannot enter into, enforce, or threaten to enforce a non-compete agreement with anyone who is known to, or anyone who meets the definition of a low-wage worker. So again, this will apply to any covenants not to compete that are entered into after July 1st, 2020. So what is a low-wage worker? It is tied to the Bureau of Labor Statistics data. That number is going to increase every year. This year, it is approximately any worker who earns less than $63,000 a year would be considered a low-wage worker, and they would not be entitled. You can't have a covenant not to compete with them. Now, right now under the statute, and people in General Assembly have said they are going to change this statute somewhat. It does not include covenants not to compete with individuals who are predominantly paid by commissions, but it does include trainees, interns, and students. To the extent you try to have provisions that say you can't service your former customers, if even if you're not soliciting them yourself, that will be problematic. You still can have non-disclosures and you can still have confidentiality provisions, but we'll see what happens. Again, you need to post information about this statute. Right now, there's not a poster, so you have to put up the statute. You've got some statutory penalties in addition to damages that the employees can seek, and it gives employees a private right cause of action with a 2-year statute of limitations period. Next slide. All right, Scott, you want to talk about, oh no, I'm talking about whistleblower, I'm sorry. So we also have under the Virginia Code section 40.1-27.3, new whistleblower protections. Employees cannot be retaliated against by an employer if they make a good faith report that they believe the employer is violating state or federal law, if they make that report to a supervisor, the government, or law enforcement. You can't retaliate against someone if they have been requested by the government or law enforcement to participate in an investigation or a hearing. You cannot, if an employee refuses to engage in a criminal act that would subject the employee to criminal liability, if you're the employer who retaliates against them for not doing that, that's going to be a problem. Also, if an employee refuses to follow an employer's orders, if they believe it violates law, and the employee informs the employer that the reason for this is the basis for the refusal. That one tends to be causing the most concern because I don't want to talk badly about anybody's employees, but it's not unusual for your employees to think they know more about the law than you may, because they've spent some time reading about it on the internet. And so if the employee walks up to you and it has an unfounded basis to say they think you're violating the law by asking them to perform a certain duty, and I'm not going to perform it because you're violating the law, arguably they are protected by this statute. In a lot of whistleblower case law, you find that there is this idea that it has to be a reasonably held belief by the employee. The statute does not address that. We'll have to see how the case law evolves. All right, let me talk a little bit now in the last couple of minutes about vaccinations. As I said, that has become a very popular topic for everybody, I think. As a general rule, on the federal level, the feds have said, the EEOC, that it is not unlawful to ask an employee if they have been vaccinated. You can mandate that your employees be vaccinated, and then if somebody has a sincerely held religious belief that they can't have a vaccination, or if there is a disability-based reason why they can't have a vaccination, then you would have to go through a reasonable accommodation process with that employee. Most employers at this point are doing everything they can to strongly encourage volunteerism when it comes to vaccinations. There are very few employers that I deal with who have actually mandated that their employees must have it. But under federal law, you are permitted to ask employees, have they been vaccinated, when they were vaccinated, when they're going to have a second shot, even to gather information about that vaccination. Again, whether you're going to do that is a business choice that you have to make as to how you believe your employees will react. So a lot of employers are trying to encourage vaccinations through, an extra paid day off, or you can take an extra day of vacation, whatever it might be. But people are trying to encourage vaccinations that way. One thing that I will caution everyone to remember, especially if you have multi-state operations, the individual states could come in and provide some type of protection to workers not to be, not to have to disclose whether they have been vaccinated potentially. That has not been the case in Virginia heretofore. I've heard nothing to suggest that Virginia is going to do that, but there are some other states that are toying with or actually have statutes in the works that would provide those types of protections, at least the protection of not allowing an employer to terminate or retaliate against an employee for the lack of a vaccination. All right. That concludes our presentation. I did not see any questions come up. Are there any questions from the audience? Okay. Well, on behalf of Scott and myself, we thank you for your attendance today. We're happy to get you the slides. They will be sent to you. I'm going to turn it over to Ray just real briefly to say his farewell, and then I've got a couple of other concluding remarks.
Thanks again for everyone tuning in today. And certainly if you have any questions about what I've briefed you today, please feel free to call our office at 757-385-6464. And hope everyone has a marvelous day.
All right. Well, thank you again to everyone for attending. You will receive the materials this week. I saw somebody asked about, is there a vaccination slide? I didn't do a vaccination slide because there's so many variables. If you've got any questions about that, you can feel free to give me a call on my number listed below, or email me, and I'm happy to converse with you and talk to you about that. Also, I encourage you all, as we are still involved in the world of COVID, and we are involved in what's going on with the Biden administration and changes that may occur with the law and all these various statutes on the federal level. Go to our webpage. You will see a COVID-19 legal resources spot, and also a Biden administration update spot. You can register on the website, and anytime something new gets posted to either one of those locations, you will get it in your email. We really had a lot of clients who really appreciated our efforts last year on the COVID-19 front, dealing with all those things and the materials we published. And so we're going to be doing that also with what goes on with the Biden administration. So it's a great resource for you to use. And when you're having a little trouble sleeping at night, you can open up that website and read to your heart's content. But thank you all very much for being here today. Have a great day.